Hello, loves. Part two. And we are going to talk about March. March. It's like saying Marsha, but there's no Marsha. It's March. March is a game changer for us. Now, I'm saying this now, and people that have had individual readings from me or have had individual coaching sessions or we've just spoke one-on-one, whatever it is, I have been warning about this time for so long. Some of the things that got instigated and started literally last year during the February Leo full moon, the very first full moon that happened in Leo in 2022, because we just had a Leo full moon a few weeks ago in 2023, and that's normal. We have a full moon in every sign every year, and I don't necessarily know that people realize that, but that is definitely the case. There were things that started in the 2022 full moon in Leo, whenever that full moon was squaring the nodes. And at that time, what I told everybody is that felt like a target. It felt like an activation point. And it was meant to launch us forward. The thing is like the first round of launching kind of went through the first eclipse season. And then we got into some weird like confusion and stagnation and not being able to get things going and some distractive energy, for lack of a better way to say it. It kind of took over the last half of 2022. And I really want to say that started for a lot of people either right after Saturn turned retrograde in June, or it happened in August, in between when we had the triple conjunction of Uranus and the North Node and Mars. That happened at the beginning of August, or on August 20th when Mars went into Gemini, where he has been since August 20th. We're almost done with that, by the way. We are almost done with Mars and Gemini. My Gemini placements are going to be so happy. Mars has been on my natal sun all week, and I can't stop moving. I'm also very irritable. It's a hell of a week to actually have contractors at my house because I've been irritable. Anyways, March 1st, 2nd, 3rd, just kind of these days. We're already kind of feeling it now, as in today is February 28th whenever I'm recording this. So we've already been kind of feeling this, and we're building up to something that's going to occur. And the key transit that's going to happen is, well, it's actually two of them. And they're really going to happen between the 2nd and the 3rd. I have this currently on March 1st. So I'm going to change this to day. So now we're on March 2nd. You'll see that we have two things starting. One, what's going to start on the 1st is the start of Venus and Jupiter's conjunction. It starts at 11 degrees, but it doesn't actually go exact until 12 degrees. That really happens on the 2nd. And then the other thing that happens immediately after that, basically simultaneously, but the exacting is what's going to happen after, is Mercury's conjunction to Saturn. Venus is about love, romance, joy, happiness, the things that bring us pleasure, food, music, poetry. Venus is putting something together real beautifully, but she's in Mars' sign. So there's beautiful action involved, making a conjunction to both Jupiter and Chiron just within a few days of each other. Whatever action that is occurring this week, whatever things are going on for many people, is that they're coming together in a blessed way, because these are two of the benefics. We're talking about beneficial planets now, Jupiter and Venus. But we also have Chiron. We have the wounded healer. We have somebody that expresses the need for healing, expresses the need to tend to wounds and tend to things that require a deeper look. There's a reason certain wounds don't heal the same. It's because the bandages that are, the topical bandages don't work. You need something deeper. That's what sutures are for. They bring things together in a deeper underneath fashion. And whatever is going on this week is very much coming together and has a long-term effect. Whatever is starting, whatever's been building up since the last eclipse season. The last eclipse season was the last 2 weeks of October, the last 10 days, but last 2 weeks of October, the first 2.5 weeks of November, that was eclipse season. We had a lot of things that went down during that time, but a lot of that was about putting certain energies in place, checking certain people and making them shift their focus or putting different things together. And now we're getting to a whole different energy where we're bringing more of that forward. Why am I saying it that way? Because Mars was the host of part of eclipse season. And Mars was frozen in the sky, spinning at 25 degrees all of eclipse season. Mars did not move from 25 degrees of Gemini until after the full moon eclipse that occurred in Taurus. So whatever was going on during that eclipse season, when we were going through our new Venus star point where Venus was conjunct the sun, all of that was very much being hidden within the rays of the sun. We weren't able to get everything quite yet. Now we're coming to a point where a lot of the planets are going to be back in Mars's other sign, the one that is not so hidden. If you ever hear the word hiding in Aries, we have very, very weird things going on. But really, it comes down to we're coming to a point of action. Seeds were planted during eclipse season, and we've had time for roots to germinate. And we've had time for things to kind of come together and get pulled in to allow the next thing to sprout. There's a reason Aries is considered the first sign of the zodiac, because it is the first sign of spring. So we're putting things together to allow things to blossom and move and grow and shift and change and develop. That's the type of energy that we're in this first part of March. Something is developing. And Venus's conjunction to Jupiter and Chiron really spell that out. But the other conjunction is Mercury and Saturn. And this feels very telling to me, because I feel like we get a mix of two different energies. One, it's like Mercury's going to conjunct Saturn at 29 degrees. Saturn's going to tell Mercury something, and Mercury's going to plunge into Pisces. I always associate Pisces with the ocean because it's almost bottomless. Like the depths are so dark and so deep and so down there. Again, I'm a Pisces moon. We have that plunge. And it seems like every step we take after Mercury goes into Pisces, which is going to happen later on the 2nd. So it's immediate. It's a 29 degree conjunction. So the very last degrees of Aquarius, and then plunge in. So it's just like we're cannonballing and going, Saturn's coming. And the thing is, Mercury doesn't do well in Pisces. Mercury doesn't do well in Jupiter ruled signs. He's considered in his detriment. Why? Because Mercury likes to do everything quickly. Quick like rabbit, not slow like turtle. 3.5 weeks to go through a sign. If it's a retrograde, it's only 3.5 weeks. We never spend more than X amount of time in a sign, and we move forward, we charge ahead. Let's get it going. Let's get it going. That's Mercury stuff. Well, Mercury is going to be in the sign that is the largest planet in the solar system, that takes a year on average to go through a single sign. Quick like rabbit, not slow like turtle ain't working here. And every step we start to take in the month of March, following this conjunction, is like walking in a fog, walking in a bit of a fishbowl, not being completely clear. And the best thing that I can tell anybody, starting from the very beginning of March, going through the rest of the month until Mercury goes into Aries, is that you need to be looking at every step you take. If the plan was not drawn out all the way before Mercury went into Pisces, don't try to write the plan down now. If you think you can do it, more power to you. But a lot of people, they're going to miss things. And that is the biggest thing that I'm going to say about this first part of March, is just understand you need to be very aware of each step you're taking and not try to skip steps. Make sure that we're moving matter-of-factly, because where we're going and everything that's coming through and everything that Mercury is trying to bring forward requires timing, and it requires things to go in a certain way, and it requires that we put more effort into being a little critical. Because if we're always flying by the seat of our pants, we're never going to get anything accomplished. We all want to get something accomplished here. And that is starting in March. The initiative of newness, of new ways of doing things, and a new thought process, and new things that are coming through are really going to be starting in March. But they're not going to just be March. The things that we start in March are going to be things that we're still going to be dealing with all throughout the year. Everything since the last eclipse season, everything since the beginning of this year has been about making space and making way for where we're going next. It's time to start looking at what's next. March is next. Mercury is about communication. It is about logistics. It is about decisions. Saturn is about rules and law and time and hierarchy and following a certain way. These two actually get along really well, and they're having their conjunction in a logical sign. That means we're getting to an edge of something that's been very logical and very well planned, really since the entire Mercury retrograde that had in Capricorn. We're making steps in the Saturnian way before Mercury plunges into an unknown. And if you've had those days where everything you are doing that you feel like you're in a fog, be prepared. We're about to be in fog. And that fog really does happen just a few hours after that conjunction. I want to say it's like 5-ish. Yeah. 5 o'clock Central. By the way, again, I'm in Oklahoma, Central Time. Adjust your time for whatever you need to go. I know I have people East Coast, West Coast. I have people in Australia and everything else. So just bear with me, and you're going to have to adjust for your time zone. Mercury going into Pisces is just like having this moment of, we've either come to that part of the list, we've been given the decision, we've been given the verdict, we've got the clear go ahead, we've had something that literally comes to a logical, planned point that immediately follows with, well, shit, what do I do next? What do I do next? I got here. I didn't expect to catch the ball. I'm the roadrunner and the coyote. I never expected to catch the coyote right now. And for a single moment, this almost feels like the roadrunner caught the coyote caught the roadrunner. I know I said it backwards. This kind of feels like that for just a split moment of, okay, what do I do with it? What do I do with you? You know, get pecked in the eyes and he runs off. That is a real big way of how this energy feels. And it feels like crap. It felt like it took forever to get here. And now we need to think of our steps, but every step we take is not necessarily a planned step. It's kind of like learning in the moment, figuring it out in the moment. Okay, this is done. Okay, I can figure this out. Okay, I've done this. Okay, we're about to do this. And we're going to be making steps all of March, making the steps. Venus starts that conjunction to Chiron between the 2nd and the 3rd. Like I said, we've got that. And Venus is just blowing through Aries. I love Venus and Aries energy. This is girl power energy. I'm just saying. If you have anyone that has like questioned your capabilities because you are a woman, they're not doing well this day. They are at this time, just because Venus has been in Aries for a while. But we're gonna keep going. All right. I like the energy right before the full moon. So this is the full moon's not going to be the morning of the 7th. We wake up basically to full moon energy. I'm going backwards. What am I doing? I do that sometimes. Now on this day, there's something very understood. There's something that brings us to a climax, a closing, an ending, but it's not horrific, by the way, in any means, because sometimes you hear ending and you're like, oh, no, That's not what this kind of feels like. But this is the very last moon opposition of Saturn before Saturn changes signs, before Saturn finally gets out of Saturn-ruled signs. After 6 years of Saturn-ruled signs, we all need a break. We all need a break, and Saturn needs to go play in somebody else's energy besides his own. And there's something about this day that really kind of leans into understanding, talking about changes, talking about how to look at something, appreciating an adjustment, appreciating where we're at, and appreciating that we're about to shift. I don't always like moon opposite Saturn. I really don't. It kind of depends on the situation and what house Saturn is in more so than the moon. Saturn in your second house versus Saturn in like your first or 10th or fourth, very, very different energy. But whenever you have the moon's opposition to Saturn, there is something about this energy that feels very much about creating an understanding and acknowledging that the changes are necessary. The people that don't like change, that they take forever and it's like we're just dragging them the whole time. Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius placements, you know what I'm talking about. Just, come on, follow me. Just follow the Gemini. With the sun being in Pisces and everything else that I'm talking about in the transit this day being in fixed signs, this very much feels like accepting that change has been necessary, accepting that we're going somewhere, accepting that we have new things to do. And that's what a lot of this one feels like. Okay. Moving along. Now let's talk about, well, we can still talk about this here. This starts on the 5th, this next part that I'm going to talk about, and it has to do with Mars and it has to do with Neptune. We have Neptune down here at 24 degrees. We have Mars right here at 21. And Mars is re-entering a square from Neptune. And I'm saying re-entering because this is not our first rodeo. And every single square has been different, and we're building up to something that really is going to occur closer to St. Patrick's Day, but we're starting to feel the buildup right here. Because Mars goes slower. He takes a little bit more time at each degree. He's usually there for 2.5 days before he goes to the next degree. So whatever the acceptance of change is here, just know that it's not just a one and done situation. We're accepting the new shift, the shift that will be the month that follows. Oh, Mars. But we'll kind of talk about that a little bit more with this full moon energy. Now, the full moon is going to perfect at 16 degrees. Immediately following this full moon's perfection at 16 degrees, Saturn changes signs. Like, this is how we wake up on the 7th. This is the energy that we wake up to. Mercury is in a fog. He's watching his steps really closely. We do not put the cart before the horse because the cart ain't going to go any faster and the horse ain't going to push it. Like, the horse pulls things, he doesn't push things. So we're getting to this moment, and whatever Mercury rules in your chart, wherever your natal Mercury placement is, really kind of plays into how a lot of this energy is. But we are looking at a full moon in a Mercury ruled sign because Virgo's ruled by Mercury. At the same time as this is perfecting, we also have Jupiter in its secret connection to this full moon. Uranus's direction is very direct. He's in a sextile to the sun. He's in a trine to the moon. But Jupiter and Chiron, their energy with this full moon is indirect. We have a mix of an antitia and a contra antitia. That means we have like hidden alignments and hidden oppositions. We have a new way to do things and a new way that we're going to translate and a new way that we're going to connect with certain people. And that new way is going to benefit us in a way that other people are not meant to know, because there's a whole reason that we do things in a secret way. It's not necessarily secrets. For some people, it might be, especially in the week following. However, this doesn't feel like that. This feels like there's two purposes to what initiative is coming through, to what we are starting, to what is changing, to what is building, to what is shifting, to what's being negotiated. There is more than one purpose. Oh, I want to buy a house. I've been in real estate for years. You're going to hear me make a lot of real estate puns, just FYI. Oh, I want to buy this house. Great. But don't we also need space for work? Oh, yeah. I guess I need a house with a shop. The shop. We need something that has more than one use. Oh, this is going to be such an awesome space to be able to hang out and do things. Great. I need storage too, so this needs to also work for that also. There's a dual purpose to the shift in the energy. And immediately after the full moon perfects, again, this is 7 a.m. on March the 7th. I'm going to bump this an hour. I know the whole screen just kind of shifted now. But what you'll see is now the moon is at 17 degrees. The sun's still at 16. It takes a little bit longer for the sun. And there he is. 0 degrees of Pisces. Saturn has changed signs. Not only has Saturn changed signs, but now Saturn is in shadow. What that means is that later this year, when Saturn turns retrograde, that the topics that start in March will be what we start to come back to later this year when Saturn is back at the 0 degree point, which will be after both eclipse seasons, actually. We have to get all the way through and get into, I think it was Scorpio season, whenever I looked at that last. So understand, whatever we are starting in March, I will keep saying this, whatever initiative we're taking, whatever contract we're negotiating, whatever partnership we're entering, whatever business we're starting, whatever school, if it's education, whatever you are starting in March is not just March. It is truly launching the rest of this year. So I like full moons. A lot of the times full moons have to do with completions. I also like to associate full moons with leveling up. You can take something to the next level at a full moon. A lot of ways that tends to be the case of just trying to take something a step higher or adjusting things. We're talking on a full moon in Mercury sign. So this involves communication and it involves logistics, and it's going to involve those things in regards to the more tangible side of Mercury. Transactions, mercantile type energy. This is very much about initiative stuff. That's why I keep saying that word. Whenever everybody went into 2020 and, 6 to 8 months later, they were talking about, it led into the great walkout or the great resignation. That's what they were calling it. Well, this is going to be the start of the great initiative. I'm just calling it now. I like this energy. With the sun still being in that sextile to Uranus, we're looking at something that is going to be liberating in a grounded way. Uranus is shaking up everything that Taurus rules. Taurus is an earth sign. Taurus is associated with goods and services and art and food and things like that. And we're wondering why we're having food shortages. Uranus is telling us that we need to change something connected to this, that the way we've been doing it isn't working anymore. And if we're not changing something over the course of his 8-year stint in this sign, then it's going to hurt us. Therefore, he's going to make us change it. How are we changing? Based off of the other side of the earth symbols. We're changing it based off of now that mutable earth energy that Virgo offers. I love mutable earth because I always associate it, again, with the home building side. There is something about taking one form and turning it into another. I look at Virgo and I look at like turning clay to brick. I look at this and think of like all of the components that it takes to turn something into concrete. I look at earth and I look at like what it takes to grow something, to grow plants, to grow our food, to grow flowers. We transmute things, tangible things, earthly things through Virgo. And the ruler of Virgo is baby stepping everything in Pisces. It's like, yay, we're doing something. And Saturn's right behind him going, gotcha. Just keep going. I'll be taking care of everything here for the next few years. So just keep going. Now, historically, when Saturn has gone into Pisces in the past, this has resulted in changes on bigger things in the macro sense. So macro would be big picture. Micro is you and your little universe. Macro is everybody, the government and society and everything else. There will be changes that we can expect related to the things that the rulers of Pisces represent. So we will see changes in regards to fortune, in regards to prosperity. We will see changes in regards to emotions and healing in the next few years. Very serious time for that. We will also see changes in how we reflect on our own doings and our own actions and our own work, because there's been so many things in the past that have not been able to be dealt with. Saturn, Daddy Saturn, because that's what I call him a lot of the times, he's not going to let us sit still. He's not going to just say, it'll be all fine. No, he's going to be like, it's time to talk about these wounds. And we will also see shifts and changes in regards to elements that affect our moods and that affect our emotions, the crutches that we lean on in regards to our emotions. If we can't handle our emotions, some people smoke weed, some people drink, some people drink tea, some people have to go for a run, some people have to do, one thing or another to work through their emotions. And Saturn going into this area is going to make us work through some emotions and work through wounds, especially wounds that have been opened in the last year as Jupiter was going through Pisces. I feel like Jupiter's stint through Pisces, especially when we went through that Antisha timeline earlier last year and this year, because we went through 3 different ones, whenever Saturn was making that hidden opposition to Neptune, we had different things that would come out. We had a lot of nostalgia-like things that have come out in the last year, things that just kind of like rang everybody's bell in a good way. But I've also seen a lot of things from other timelines that have really activated in the last year. And I'm expecting something in the month of March that has to do with the finance world for sure. And through the entire Saturn in Pisces transit, I am expecting something in regards to drug laws to change, specifically psychedelics in those areas, because the studies that have been going on since the early 2000s, since the Neptune-Uranus transit through Aquarius, they're really starting to come to the surface. And I think that we're going to see the decision and the ruling regarding those in the next few years, not necessarily on March 7th. But in these next few years, we're going to start to see those tangible changes. Okay, moving on. That is our full moon. Mars is, again, re-entering that square to Neptune. Mars is our ambition. Mars is our desires. Mars is everything that we want to get accomplished and everything we try to achieve. And he is over these weeks coming back into a square with Neptune. And again, this is the third one. I said that a little bit ago. Everyone has been different. Why do I say that? Because the first one, Neptune was retrograde, but Mars was direct. And that's the one that happened in October. The second one, the one that was a lot more intense, that's the one that started to really come through in November. And remember the things that we were seeing in the financial markets that were really shifting, especially whenever it came to crypto. Crypto was there were so many fraudulent crypto things that came out in November. And that was whenever Neptune was retrograde, but Mars was retrograde coming back into it. And it's like the cloud that was there that we thought we would get away with, Mars came back around and said, no. You're going to make this make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, well, then there's consequences. Mars was retrograde. He went all the way down to 8 degrees, turned direct on January 12th, now has been trekking back through, and he's getting back to his point of shadow. He is getting back to the edge of where he was at before. and we're looking at something building up, something that is both in the sense of like manifesting, but also trying to get a different understanding. If there has been an area that we thought one way was going to be the goal, that we've had this idealistic way of looking at things, we're going to find that within the next 10 to 12 days following March 11th, that our idea isn't quite the right idea. And something is going to come back around. Something is going to come back full force. This third one is different because now Neptune is direct and Mars is direct. Not only do we have both those planets direct, but Neptune's got other things coming. He's got the sun coming right behind him. Mercury is going to follow that. And we're going to have this ripple effect of energy that's going to hit deeper into this week. Here's Mars at 24. Here's Neptune at 24. So we're starting it real close on the 12th where we're less than a degree apart. And we're moving this ahead. We have so many little things that are just going to need to come together. But the things that are coming together in one way, shape, or form, it's like we don't know how the turnout's going to be because Neptune's application is here. It's like we have an idea and we have a goal and we have an ambition, but we're not going to see the full effect until the sun hits Neptune and sheds light on some things. We've had one way of thinking and one way of doing things and one way of wanting to make something happen. And still, it's not going to go quite that way. And as we get closer to the sun's conjunction to Neptune, this transit timeline, we're going to talk specifically. I'm going to put this on. I'm going to leave this on the 16th, but we're really talking about the timeline of March 12th all the way like March 21st. Just the whole timeline. And I've been telling my clients this, like we're going to have this whole span right here that we're going to be hit with things that we were not expecting, things that are not going to go to plan, that require us to immediately shift the plan, then immediately address something. And we have more than one big transit going right here because on the 16th, we also have Pluto's square to Venus. So we have Pluto up here at 29 degrees. We have Venus down here at 29 degrees. Pluto's in the superior position. So Pluto is technically imposing that square onto Venus, but it's the last square to Venus before Venus changes signs and goes into her own sign for one. And it's like, I like this transit. I know that sounds weird because it's Pluto, but Pluto's my chart ruler. So I have a different respect for Pluto. I understand both the trauma side of Pluto, but I also understand the transformational side of Pluto. And this feels like seeing somebody for the last time, having something revealed to you about somebody that changes your opinion of them, having an event come through that changes your perspective or changes the plan, having something come to the surface, something can be very triggering that makes you overcome a fear. But this really does feel like either seeing an old person new again, or it is seeing an old person for the last time. That whatever events occur with everything else going on, it's just like, I'm not going to continue this. With Pluto's square to Venus right here, it's either like running into somebody that maybe you did want to see or maybe you didn't want to see, but then afterwards realizing, oh, that really wasn't so bad. And Venus will go into Taurus. There's more than one reason I'm saying like there's a shift and a change in this energy because Pluto's also about to change signs, and we'll talk about that one more whenever we get to it. But this is talking about and showing us something about like fear, or it's, okay, we've done all this work and now we need to debut. Now we need to open. Now we need to just shoot our shot in whatever way, shape, or form, and allow for what happens next to truly happen next. Addressing that fear, addressing that change, overcoming something. I'm not saying this is going to be an easy day. It's not going to be an easy day. This isn't going to be an easy week. There is going to be a lot of movement and a lot of activity. And some people don't like rapid movement. Fixed signs. Some people don't like having to address something so head on. They would prefer to always be in the back. And the thing is on this week, no matter who you are, one way, shape, or form, you have to address something. It's going to be a part of the addressing. And it's not always going to be easy. There's going to be some people that are going to have words. There's going to be some people that aren't seeing eye to eye, but it's necessary. Now, as the sun makes its conjunction to Neptune, and Neptune is, imposing his square to Mars, therefore now the sun is going to team up with Neptune, and it also expose something towards Mars. And that is, again, looking at something deeper, having a revelation come through. Now, this can either be we've had one thing in mind, and now that reality has set in, or now that we're getting to the next point, it's like we've manifested something, we've turned something into more of a reality. This can be revealing something in regards to, again, spirituality, in regards to faith, but this can also be that other side. It's not always fun and, sunshine and rainbows whenever it comes to Neptune. A lot of the times it can be about deception, and it can be about lies, and it can be about things that had like the wool being pulled over our eyes. We had one way in mind of doing things, or we've imagined everything's going to go this wonderful way. And then the sun's going to make a conjunction to Neptune and going, but what about the rest of the story? What about everything else that's going on right here? What about? And it requires us to kind of scramble, because we're going to immediately be met with Mercury's conjunction to Neptune, also imposing that square to Mars. But Mercury is the host of Mars and Gemini. Mercury rules Gemini. So this feels like we have something else come to light, something come to the surface that kind of recalibrates our trajectory, our target, our goal. We see the results of something that we've already done, and it makes us like immediately start to plan the next one, or plan the next steps, or enter the next stage of planning. That can be positive and that can be negative. If what comes to the surface that your material isn't going to be on the job site, if what comes to the surface is that somebody's been lying on their bank statements, or they've been, lying in regards to something else, then this energy right here is going to be like the scramble to make something right. Or, if you've got your clients that are clear to close, or they were supposed to be clear to close, and then somebody did that last minute check and, oh, nope, there's something new on that credit report. All of my lenders and my realtors and my salespeople, all of them are going to be like, I know that feeling, because I know you do. This can be a little bit of that. But there is a lot of energy this week. And again, I'm saying this week, I have it just on this one date whenever it comes to what's coming up in March. But I'm really talking about an energy that's going to be building up from the 11th, from the 12th, 13th, 14th. It's going to be the most exact here on that 16th and 17th time frame. And then it's going to spur reactive energy. Why am I saying reactive? Because immediately after all these conjunctions to Neptune, everything's going to go into Aries. And the thing about Aries is it can be very impulsive. In general, that is a Martian energy. Aries placements can be very impulsive. Not everybody. Some people can be very balanced, depends on, the rest of the chart. But the primary thought of Aries is that it is reactive, and it is impulsive, and it is that very active side of Mars. But that host of Aries, Mars, will go from being in Gemini forever, since August 20th, but it feels like forever now, right afterwards, Mars is also going to change signs. So you're seeing this whole fluctuation of shifting multiple energies, not just like the normal, fast moving planets are our core planets, but also our outer planets are part of this energy too. So we're seeing an entire initiative shift playing out throughout the month of March. And it's going to, again, make us very reactive. So the other thing about once Mars hits this 25-degree mark, and that is actually not going to be just on the 17th, but that is going to be the 15th, 16th, and 17th. Mars also hits his shadow point. That means hits that point where he turned retrograde and will finally surpass it. So everything that we've been dealing with in one way, shape, or form from basically the middle of September all the way till March 15th, I'm just going to say the 15th, these are all topics that have been gone over in one way, shape, or form. It has required one action and then another layer of actions and now a third layer of actions that are going to finally be able to progress forward from here, progress from this energy, progress from the relationship, progress from the verdict, from the compromise, from the results, from the debut, whatever that is. Now we'll be taking the next steps following. Going back to the fact that Venus will be in her square to Pluto. Right afterwards, Venus, again, she's going to go into her home sign. She's going to go into Taurus. We finally have Venus back in one of her own signs. We haven't had that since eclipse season, so since the end of October. And even then, she was combust because she was conjunct the sun for an entire month. And we're going to be able to actually feel that Venusian energy. Whatever we're trying to debut or whatever we're trying to put out there, it's very likely, because so many people are all in the same energy, that it's time for some change. Real change, not Band-Aid level change, but real change. Because it's time for change, they're going to be a lot more accepting of it. Oh, you're starting a company? Oh, you're going off on your own? Oh, you're going to go, move to another state? Oh, you're going to go back to school? People are going to accept that information a lot better in March compared to in other times. Especially now that Saturn is in Pisces, very much more accepting of adjustments and change. So that'll be good. Venus will immediately enter that sextile to Saturn. Sextiles are where feminine energies speak to one another. Water is a feminine energy. Earth is a feminine energy. Venus is in Taurus, an earth sign. Saturn is in Pisces, a water sign. So there's something very strategic, very uplifting. It's a gentle energy, but it allows things to progress. I like the fact that Venus will enter Taurus right as all this squaring is going on between Mercury and the Sun and Mars. Now, the 17th. The other thing that we have here is not only will we have Mercury making that conjunction to Neptune, is that we're going to have the Sun and Mercury in a conjunction as well. As well as something can come across, or as hopeful as we can be, or as educated as we can be, just understand that there will be little checks from the universe that require us to get clarity, that require us to really make sure we're on the right page with not only, what's going on in the universe, but with ourselves and with our star player. It's like, be aware. And there is something that just kind of clicks with this Mercury conjunct the Sun, squaring Mars at the same time. It's like something clicks. Whenever Mercury was sitting on top of Neptune, it was like square peg, round hole, square peg, round hole. Nothing's making sense. Now we're getting back to the Sun and we're like, oh, I can see this better now. Neptune's fogginess keeps us from being completely clear. We're trying to work it out. We're trying to understand. We can be very frustrated this week. There can be a lot of frustrations in general this week. A lot of tensions, but they're in the moment tensions. They're just being frustrated with a certain situation, frustrated with something not working out. It's a temporary thing. once Mercury makes it past Neptune, makes that conjunction to the sun, it's like a light bulb squaring Mars. I have an idea. Let's make this work. Mercury is hosting Mars. Let's do this. Well, let's just adjust it this way. Let's just go this direction. And there will be frustration. There will be tensions, but they can get worked through. It's just kind of like that first test, that first check, that first, hey, are you paying attention? Hey, did you plan this right? Hey, did you think this through? Hey. Okay. Moving this along. On the 19th, Mercury is going to go into Aries, and for just a single few days, not even a full week, Mercury and Mars are back in mutual reception. Why do I say back? Because whenever Mars turned retrograde back at the end of October, it literally was Mercury was trining Mars, and right as Mars turned retrograde, Mercury went into Mars' sign. And even though we started off as a Mars retrograde, anyone that was dealing with that Mars retrograde can tell you, like, those first few weeks, we weren't talking about Mars retrograde. We were talking about eclipse season. Mars was just spinning. Mars did not start to move until after the full moon on November 8th. And during all of that time where Mars was spinning and all of eclipse season, what was Mercury doing? Mercury was working on behalf of Mars. That's what mutual reception is. It's a house swap. If you've ever seen the movie The Holiday, I will always reference this movie because it's my best example. Cameron Diaz is over here and Kate Winslet went over here, and that's just it. They were in the house swap situation. Mars was over here in, that techie place, and Mercury was over in the little cottage over in London. Like, that's what was going on back then. And now we kind of re-enter that. It's not the same cottage and at all, because we're in Aries. So now we're at the beach house, for lack of a better way to put it. But for just a few days, Mercury and Mars are very much working within one another, just based off being in each other's signs. And there's something here that requires additional action. If you notice that the sun is still in that square to Mars, we're not at 90 degrees, we're at 89, close enough for government work, but there's still an adjustment here. There's still changes coming. We're still working through the exact same thing, that clarity moment, that Mercury Cazimi that happened while squaring Mars, and then Mercury went into Mars' sign. I'm telling you, that feels like clarity of how to flip that switch, of how to overcome that change, that check, that fogginess, how to overcome that thing that just occurred, that thing that just came to the surface. If we thought we were going in one direction, and then the sun and Mercury's conjunction to Neptune revealed deception versus, manifesting, then this is definitely how to move forward now. Mercury going into Aries, this is the start of pop-off season. That's what I call Mercury in Aries. Any of my clients that have natal Mercury in Aries, I always mind your Mercury, because the pop-off is huge. This is great if you need to yell from the heavens. We got new stuff, new life, new business, new. That's great. If you just found out somebody was lying to you, this is you not letting it go. I don't blame you. To be completely clear, I wouldn't blame anybody. I've definitely been in this seat before. But that's what this feels like. It's just like whatever happens once Mercury goes into Aries, it's either boasting from the rooftop that there's something new and we're having fun and this is happening, or it's the other way around of this can go either way. Okay, we're going to move this along. Now, that's the 19th. We're not going to go much further. Oh, wait, we will say one thing. I like the 20th whenever Venus hits the North Node. This, for a lot of people, is going to be a lot more of an internal thing, but it's kind of like a switch of saying, I want something. When you look at the nodes, there's a north node and then there's a south node. The north node is something about gains. If you look at it in Vedic astrology, this is the head of the dragon. And this is something that we want to devour. This is something that we want to consume. This is something that we want to control. This is something that we want. So a lot of energy on this day can feel much more internal. But I think it's funny that this is going to happen right before the new moon that's going to happen in Aries. So there can be that internal shift, that internal click, this internal, I want something. And we can feel it very largely on the 20th. And then we get to the 21st, which is the new moon in Aries, a new moon in Mars' sign, but Mars is still in Gemini. So it's like putting the rest of the energy into that Martian, reactive, boastful, let's do this energy. But at the same time, Mars is about to change signs. And Mars's adjustment from Gemini to Cancer will completely adjust the rest of Aries season. So the first few days of Aries season, the timeline around this new moon, it's going to be very loud and very rambunctious and very boastful, for lack of a better way to say it. But a lot of movement, a lot of action, and a lot of, yes, so celebratory in a lot of ways. Venus is conjunct the North Node. I wanted this. I manifested it. We've created this. It's happening. There's some goals in mind with this energy. But it's not going to stay at that high for the entirety of Aries season. It's just not. So, I'm not saying that in a negative sense either, by the way. It's actually going to be, in a lot of ways, a lot of considerate and helpful energy as we continue. Okay. March 23rd. Pluto enters Aquarius. Pluto is a generational planet. What that means is that whenever he goes through a sign, it doesn't just affect that year or that month or that week. It affects a decade or two, anywhere between 16 and 24 years specifically. This will be our first pinky toe dip. This is what I call it. The pinky toe dip into Aquarius. Pluto's going to stick his foot in there, be like, I don't like that water. And after a few months, he's going to go back to Capricorn and be like, I'm going to just go get a drink. Let me know when that's. I'll be back in a few months. I'm going to let that water warm up. Dip his pinky toe in the water. When I have been really meditating on some of these transits and some of the things that have been coming through, there are certain loops in time that feel like they're starting to come back up. And Pluto going into Aquarius is going to bring some of those things back up. It's going to put some type of change. But we're looking at the planet of death and the underworld and hidden things. Underworld. We're looking at the planet of transformation and reincarnation and rebirth going into a new sign. Pluto's been in Capricorn for many, many years. And it was right at the start of Pluto going into Capricorn that we had a huge shift in our financial market. Does anybody remember what that was? That was back in the timeline between 2006 and 2008, whenever he was making his jumps back and forth between Sag and Capricorn. Pluto was going back and forth. And then in 2008, we had the mortgage crisis and the housing crisis and the banks falling and yada, 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 yada. We also had Uranus-Saturn opposition at that time in the signs of Pisces and Virgo. And those topics are going to come back up in one way, shape, or form, because certain areas of the sky that were being highlighted back then are highlighted again, just with different planets. So in 2008, Uranus was in the sky, literally, where Neptune has been this last year. And we're seeing a bunch of things with corporate side of banking, and we're seeing a lot of businesses, and we're seeing a lot of things on that investment side. And we're seeing that a lot of people did not learn their lessons. And now we're seeing another shift. So I want to be clear. I am anticipating somewhere March, April, that we're going to have something happen in regards to the financial market. And when Pluto goes into Aquarius, it's like everyone that wasn't aware before is going to be very aware afterwards. Very aware. And that's what part of this feels like. It feels like we're going to understand something. Now I'm back on the macro stuff, so the big picture stuff. Feels like we're going to see something. It feels like we're going to understand something. It's feeling like something is going to be brought to the surface that makes everybody very, very aware of certain actions and certain decisions and certain things that have been getting done that we were not privy to before. And it requires a shift, and it requires a change, and it requires a different motion. 2 days afterwards, Mars changes signs. So you'll see right here, we have 0 degrees of Mars at Cancer. Mars is considered in its, not detriment. It doesn't do well in Cancer. He's exalted in the side of Capricorn, so he's just not as happy in Cancer. He doesn't do as well. But that's because we're talking about the god of war and knives and and things along this nature, and our ambitions and our drive, sinking into a feminine water sign that is connected to mothers and nurturing and motherhood. And it is at this moment when Mars goes into Cancer that I feel like the rest of Aries season changes. And everything we've been working on, everything that we've been building, everything that we're going towards, everything that we've been waiting for the decisions on, it now puts us into an area that requires, yes, our ambition and our drive and our desire to do well, but it also is going to require nurturing. So if we're launching a business, if you already own a business or you're establishing your business and you're launching a new product or a new way of doing things or a new way of networking or something new in that regard, it's like we do something successful that first go round. We're getting like the return, we're getting the feedback, and we're super excited. And then we realize now we have to do it again. Now we have to make it happen continuously. We have to create the system. We have to create the procedure. We have to create the steps. And we have to then make sure that the steps are always being followed. This is that energy. We have to nurture what we've created. We have to feed it. We have to water it. It's an animal. It's a plant. We're putting our love into it, speaking our happy words. You're a beautiful flower. Not everybody's doing flowers, but still. You're a beautiful mushroom. And we're going forward and we're moving. The things that start to occur after March 25th, yes, they are reactive, but they're reactive from a different place. They're reactive in a lot of ways from an emotional place. In a lot of ways from a place where we want to see something to succeed and to do well or to do better or to be able to overcome. Mars is now in Cancer. All right. One more major transit for the month. Mercury will make its conjunction to Chiron. That's not the major transit. I like that energy. Then Mercury is going to make its conjunction to Jupiter. This energy really does feel like we're getting confirmation that we did what we needed to do, that we were able to be successful, that we're having that plan of action come into place right here. And we're allowing things to finally progress and take action. Mars is the host of everything going on in Aries. It's in that sign of Cancer. And Mercury making that conjunction to Jupiter is just like, I'm glad I took some baby steps, because now I can see that had I not taken all those baby steps, had I just tried to jump to the top of the stairs, that I probably would have fell on my face. I'm clumsy. I'm Mars ruled. Of course I'm clumsy. It's like, I probably would have fell on my face. Don't fall on your face. You don't have to fall on your face. Mercury and Jupiter's conjunction right here in Aries is just like, I'm really glad I did what I did. I'm really glad this has worked out the way that it has. And I can see it's going to continue to do well. And I plan on this continuing to do well. And we're going to see a very different energy now of both Jupiter and Mercury, mainly Jupiter, moving forward, especially in the month of April. We're not going to do April on this reading. We will do it on the next month. Oh, I'm still an hour. I'm goofy. I make mistakes. Dusty is human. One of my friends is going to smack me for saying that, but Dusty is human. Dusty makes mistakes on occasion. Okay. March 30th. And this is basically the last transit we're going to talk about for this month. One, Mars is now in a trine to Saturn. So what that means is that we have Mars here at 2 degrees of Cancer. Saturn is at 2 degrees of Pisces, applying its water to water. So this is emotion to emotion. This is nurturing to nurturing. This is holistic understanding to motherly concepts. This is truly a lot of understanding and grace. I do like the word grace here in a lot of ways. But at the same time, we have these two right here. We have Venus and Uranus and Taurus making a conjunction at 16 degrees. And babies, this ain't their first conjunction at 16 degrees. I want to say it was around June 11th of last year, of 2022. I think it was June 11th. For anyone that likes to go backwards to go look at transit, I do that all the time, this one. So I know as this grows, other listeners will do the same thing. Venus and Uranus came into a conjunction in Taurus, and they were opposed by the moon in Scorpio. It was the edge of eclipse season, and it was right before we went into the Sagittarius full moon that this occurred. And right now, this day, March 30th, it's building up towards that next full moon that will happen in Libra in that first part of April. So we're building up towards something on the 30th, but this buildup is towards a full moon in a Venus-ruled sign. And Venus is making a conjunction to Uranus at the 16 degree mark. At the mark she made a conjunction to Uranus in last June. Now that opposition of the moon to Venus and Uranus meant that whatever we were trying to make happen, for a lot of people, something didn't come together. Something didn't happen. It didn't go the way that we thought it was going to go. And we're kind of getting a redo. There's something very exciting, something, we're not expecting, something that can kind of blindside some people in some ways, but in other ways, it's just like, what took you so long? What took you so long? And Venus is going to make this conjunction to Uranus without that opposition of the moon, because the moon is in Cancer. In fact, the moon is actually coming into an opposition to Pluto this day. And by the end of this day, she will have made that opposition to Pluto. So there's something here that's now able to finally come together that wasn't able to come together before. Something that can improve, and something that can be very boastful, and something that can just take us to the next step. And the thing is Venus before was a new Venus that had just had a retrograde in Capricorn that was still just kind of like shaky and making, adjustments. Now she's a more mature Venus, and she's had the full cycle. And in fact, she too is building up towards a retrograde that we're going to have this summer in between July and August. We're going to have a Venus retrograde in the sign of Leo. And I'm very excited for that. And Venus will be making squares to Uranus during that retrograde. So whatever is meant to come together here, it will get tested later in some ways, but there's something very tangible and very earthly and very exciting and very loving and yet very adventurous that is meant to come together around this time. And that's what we're aiming towards. Now that Mars is in Cancer, a lot of the reactiveness of Aries is going to dwindle a little bit. It's not going to be completely gone away. But once Venus makes that conjunction to Uranus, we have something that speaks to our heart. I'm very excited for this transit. I'm very excited to see what this day turns out to be. Of any and all of the transits, like the one I am most excited for in March is this one. But the other ones are all very exciting too. Don't downplay anything. But I really am looking forward to this energy because I feel like we're taking a lot of the unknown that occurred through the first part of the month and making things very much more known. This will be a beautiful day to launch something media-wise. So if you are going to launch your website, if you're going to launch an e-store, if you're going to launch something along those lines, this is an awesome day to do that. It really is. Aside from that, I think we're pretty good with March. So here's the plan, my loves. My goal actually is going to be to do 2 episodes a week for the time being, because I actually already know some of what March is going to be for me. And for a lot of my people that I do like regular one-on-one coaching, I'm not going to be able to do that because I'm going to be too busy building that infrastructure for the next stage of the medicine grow and everything that I'm doing. So I'm starting my own food grow and I'm starting to grow my own medicines. Some of my clients already know this. Some of my clients are literally getting weekly updates about this because they want them. But that's my next step, and that's part of my next stage. And it's something that literally started to come to me back at the first part of 2022. I started to see it in my meditation, and I started to see it, like, hearing the word grow. But I'm in a medicinal marijuana state. My initial energy and thought was like, I have no desire to own a grow because that's the norm here now. Whenever you talk about people that have marijuana farms, they don't call them farms, they call them marijuana grows. So when I heard the word grow, I'm like, I don't want that. Where's that coming from? Then over time, it has made a lot more sense. I'm like, oh, that's not where I was going with that. But I like this direction. I definitely do. So I have a lot of things that I'll be working on. I won't have as much one-on-one time over the next month. So this seemed like the perfect time to go ahead and launch the podcast, because more and more of my people, whenever I do a reading for them, we record it anyways, and they just go back and rewatch their individual recording over and over again until I answer my messages. If you've never met me before, if you don't know, again, my Facebook page is called Spiritually Bougie Astrology. The website has not been able to get launched yet. I had to put that to the wayside whenever my mom got sick. And it's coming. It'll be something that'll happen later in 2023. For the most part now, the best way to get a hold of me is actually through that Spiritually Bougie Astrology page. You can message me directly. There's only me. I'm the only person that responds. If you are referred by a friend over, then usually most of my clients, what they'll do is they just start a group chat or a 3-way text or whatever they're doing, saying, hey, my friend, I need to talk to my friend. And then it just kind of goes from there. So I hope this is helpful. If you enjoyed this, be ready for the next one, because I'll put another one out next week. And what I'll do next week will be more focused on the energy day by day of next week. And then I'll also kind of go into other things too later on. But in the meantime, it's just kind of getting us through the energy of where we're going next. And a lot of the energy of March and April going all the way into May is shifting towards new stability. And that is the best way I can describe it. It's an entire initiative of people shifting towards new stability and new grounded areas of life and new stable areas of life. That Saturn-Uranus square that we dealt with for the last 2 years, that's done. Especially once Saturn goes into Pisces. We are going now more into an area of innovation and growing and changing and allowing new things to take shape. And those things have already been seeded. And now we're going to start to see the debuts and the launching and the new ways of doing things and the new ways of thinking. And it's all very, very exciting. So I will talk to everybody soon. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for all of the support. I love each and every one of you. And I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.